Angelica is confident that she can reach the level Rick showed her in 1 year, and Rick is declared the winner of this match. Snape is surprisingly calm, and it is because he is actually happy to see Geese lost. Geese destroyed Snape's life as a fighter, so Snape doesn't feel bad for him at all. Snape has lost a lot of money after betting on Geese, and he won't be able to marry Angelica now. Angelica mocks him for it, but she is surprised when Snape accepts defeat. It's finally time for the second match of the tournament. That'll have Bruston face Keldon. Keldon is a 3-time champion, but Bruston beats every opponent he fought with just 1 punch. Keldon can instantly tell how much of a beast Bruston is, because he is just standing there, but he still doesn't leave a single opening. The fight begins, so Keldon starts with the barrage of punches, but the crowd is amazed when Bruston pushes Keldon back. Keldon becomes excited, because Bruston is the strongest person he has ever faced. But everyone is horrified when Geese returns to the arena. Geese's dragon blood has made him go crazy, so he goes on a rampage in the stands. The terrifying Geese goes to attack Keldon, but Keldon easily stops him and sends him flying. Geese's strength is at the level of an A rank, but Keldon destroyed him so easily. This makes Rick's group wonder if he has stepped into the realm of S rank. Keldon is disappointed to hear that his match is being postponed to the next day, but Bruston says that he sensed uncertainty in his attacks. Later, everyone goes to eat, and they discuss how they just need Bruston or Rick to win, and they will get the jewel thereafter. Rick isn't there because he went on his 700 kilometers run, and Angelica isn't even surprised by his craziness anymore. Rick gets pretty far from the city, and he finds Keldon training. Rick thinks that Keldon should be more concerned about exhausting himself before his fight against Bruston, but Keldon doesn't care. Instead, Keldon wants to spar against Rick. Rick has no choice but to spar, and he shocks Keldon with his incredible speed. Rick is impressed to see Keldon dodge his punch, so Rick wonders why Keldon got hit 1 time during the tournament. Rick knows that Keldon uses his strong sense of smell during fights, so Rick wonders if his nose is just stuffy. Keldon acknowledges Rick's strength, so he decides to tell him his backstory. Keldon grew up always looking forward to his next fight, but eventually there wasn't anything he could call a fight anymore. Things got better when he came to Heractopia, but Keldon eventually started beating everyone there too. Keldon was knocking people out in under 1 minute, and with just 1 punch. Keldon became upset because things started getting boring again, but he thought it wouldn't be so bad, because at least Gym Leader was happy. The fights became meaningless, so getting stronger was the only thing Keldon had to look forward to. One day some guy told the Gym Leader that people were starting to get bored of the tournament, because Keldon just kept winning with 1 punch. This guy warned that Gym Leader's gym would fail if people stopped caring about fighting, so he wanted Keldon to start losing on purpose. Gym Leader couldn't have cared less about what this guy wanted, and there was no way he would ever tell Keldon to lose a fight. Keldon did not want to cause problems for the guy who was already missing an eye, so he threw a fight so everyone would think that he was beatable. From then on, Keldon mixed some bad fighting days with good ones. Keldon made it so the crowd would love watching the fights, and he still won 3 times in a row. Now Keldon fights so that matches are exciting, and he never fights seriously. Keldon's fights draw huge crowds to the city, and his coach Jim prospers. Rick seemingly wasn't even listening, and he just warned Keldon not to take Bruston lightly. The next day the fight is set to take place, and the audience is told that defense magic has been cast over the seating area. The fight starts the same way it did before, but this time Keldon uses a new move. Everyone is shocked because Keldon rotated his arm at high speed to increase the force of his blow. It was enough to knock Bruston's hand out of the way, but Bruston nearly eliminates Keldon with his counterattack. Keldon is impressed, but Bruston can't say the same. Bruston can tell that Keldon isn't fighting seriously, but Keldon wonders if Rick has told him the truth. Bruston is just making assumptions, but Keldon admits that he holds back for the sake of the audience. Keldon acknowledges that Bruston is the real deal, but he still can't fight seriously. If Keldon does, then everyone will realize that he has been holding back and throwing fights. Keldon is ashamed, but Bruston commends him for putting others before himself. Bruston is disappointed about not being able to fight Keldon at full strength, but it can't be helped, so Bruston prepares to use the appropriate amount of strength for this situation. Bruston says that he will only fight with 2 fingers, and he won't move a single inch from the spot he is standing in. It would be hypocritical for Keldon to tell him to fight seriously, so he just accepts the challenge. Bruston tosses him around a bit, with just his 2 fingers, and Kelvin realizes that he is also making the fight interesting. Everyone cheers for Kelvin, but Mizik can tell that Bruston is doing something clever. Kelvin thinks about how much fun it would be to fight someone like Bruston at full strength, especially because there are a lot of attacks he wants to test out. Unfortunately, Kelvin just won't let himself ruin everything. Just then Gym Leader yells at him, and reveals that he sees right through Kelvin. Gym Leader knows that Kelvin has been holding back, but he says that it has always been his dream to train up the strongest fighter in history. The Gym Leader wants Kelvin to become the strongest, but Kelvin wonders if it's okay. The old man would like nothing more, so Kelvin decides to fight to his heart's content. Kelvin has never been more excited, and he tells Bruston that there is no need to act anymore. Everyone is shocked when Bruston stops Kelvin's all-out attack, but Kelvin points out that Bruston had to use all 5 fingers to stop him. Kelvin wonders if it was an accident, but Bruston explains that he is just using the appropriate amount of strength. Bruston keeps blocking all of Kelvin's attacks, but Kelvin sees an opening. Kelvin just ends up getting tossed, but he irons up his body to avoid the impact. The 2 fighters are having a great time, but the crowd has begun to realize that Kelvin has been tricking them this entire time. There is no going back now, so Kelvin is determined to take this fight all the way. Kelvin uses level 5 nature-composed magic, but Angelica points out that dog people like him are not supposed to be good with magic. This means that Kelvin must have trained himself to his limits several times. Rick is incredibly impressed, and he determines that Kelvin must be on the same level as Bruston. Everyone is shocked, and the Gym Leader thinks about how he didn't even know Kelvin could use magic. Bruston blocks the attack, but Kelvin closes the gap and prepares another spell. Kelvin dodges Bruston's attack, and he manages to trap Bruston. Angelica expected no less from a champion, but Rick is worried about something. Kelvin prepares his next spell, but Bruston's group don't seem to be worried. The same can't be said for the crowd, as they are shocked when Kelvin prepares to use level 8 magic. Kelvin creates a giant ball of energy, and Rick is horrified to see how bad things are getting. Angelica has never seen Rick like this, and Rick just says that Kelvin is far stronger than he imagined. What's most terrifying is that this means Bruston will stop holding back. Bruston breaks free from the trap, and determines that Kelvin should be able to take the attack he is about to use. Kelvin's giant ball of energy is just getting bigger, but the entire crowd is shocked when Bruston just uses brute strength to stop the attack. Bruston acknowledges Kelvin's new will to fight, and everyone is shocked when he gives a quarter thumbs up. It is a tradition in orc battles, and it means that both fighters will abandon evasions and defense to simply exchange blows. Rick is horrified to hear this, because it means that Bruston will just be attacking for the rest of the fight. Kelvin feels something he has never felt before, and he wonders if this feeling is the thing called terror. Bruston is so fast that Kelvin's senses of smell are useless against him, and he gets thrown back from just a shock wave of Bruston's punch. Kelvin uses different types of level 7 magic, but it is no use. Bruston just keeps moving forward, and he isn't even blinking. Everyone is sure that Kelvin is out of energy after using so many spells, and Bruston lands a punch. Angelica thinks it was a direct hit, but Rick explains that it wasn't. Kelvin used several moves to avoid getting destroyed. Kelvin's bones and organs are still messed up pretty badly, but any other person would have been destroyed. Kelvin considers giving up for a moment, but he has always wished for an opponent like Bruston. This is the fight Kelvin has been looking for his entire life, so he angrily tells himself to get up. Kelvin is all out of magic, but he refuses to give up, so Kelvin declares that he still has his physical strength. Kelvin unleashes a flurry of punches, but Rick knows that he won't last long after taking so much damage. Kelvin eventually collapses, and he is surprised to learn that guys as strong as Bruston really do exist. Just then, everyone begins to cheer for Kelvin. Kelvin is touched to hear them cheering, even after he deceived them for so long, so he stands up once more. The audience goes crazy, and Kelvin prepares to throw one final punch. Kelvin is out of magic and strength, but he says that this is the time to use his spirit for fuel. Kelvin is covered in flames as he combines several techniques and unleashes his attack. Everyone watches, absolutely amazed by the grand display of power, but this incredible attack does nothing to Bruston. Bruston commends him for the impressive attack, and wonders if Kelvin has used every last drop of energy he had. Kelvin can only laugh, as he realizes that he couldn't even move Bruston but Kelvin says that this fight was the most fun he has ever had in his entire life. Kelvin has earned Bruston's respect, and he shows it by punching him right in the face. The gym leader acknowledges that Kelvin has lost, but he still considers him to be the greatest fighter in history. Kelvin collapses as he is out for the count, but the joy this fight brings him makes him smile. Bruston's friends cheer for his victory, and Rick congratulates him on defeating the champion. Angelica thinks that such an overwhelming victory against the champion is incredible, but Bruston says that Kelvin was very impressive. Rick is glad that they will for sure get the jewel now, and all he will have to do is withdraw. Bruston interrupts Rick, and just says that he is looking forward to their match. Rick realizes that he is in great danger, and loses a bunch of hair from the overwhelming stress. Elsewhere, Kelvin reads articles about his loss, and how he had been deceiving everyone. Kelvin feels like he has become the villain, but Gym Leader is sure that everything will be fine. Gym Leader is more interested in Kelvin's final move, because he never knew Kelvin had such a powerful attack in his arsenal. Kelvin explains that the move just came to him, because he was so absorbed in the moment. Kelvin feels guilty about lying to everyone, and even worse about losing. Gym Leader knows that he was just being considerate, and reminds him that losing isn't a big deal, because he can just train hard and get stronger again. Kelvin wonders why he looks after him so much, so the gym leader explains that he is like a son to him. Bruston interrupts, and offers to treat Kelvin's wounds. Kelvin rejects the offer, because Kelvin wants to feel pain that he hasn't felt in a while. Kelvin also realizes that Rick was right for warning him about how strong Bruston is. Rick isn't doing so great, as he has locked himself in his room. Angelica tells him to stop acting like a child, but Rick doesn't want to die again. Snape came to give some encouragement, but now Snape tries to convince Rick to come out of hiding. Snape explains that everyone is excited to watch the finals, because this is the first time in a while that they will have a new champion. Snape would like for Rick to participate, but Rick says that his life is more important than some tournament. Snape changes his strategy and dramatically explains that a lot of people are counting on him to make the tournament a success. Tons of money has been waged as well. Snape says that it can't be helped if Rick doesn't want to risk his life, and he determines that everyone else will just have to abandon their dreams. Angelica reminds Rick that he can just be revived, so dying shouldn't be a big deal. That is easy for Angelica to say, but Rick says that dying is scary. Angelica reminds him that he endured years of training with Bruston, so he shouldn't be scared of fighting just one match against him. Rick says that training and fighting are completely different, and Angelica just wouldn't understand. Angelica is hurt by these words, and Angelica realizes that she has been wrong about Rick all along. Just then Mizet wonders if Rick ever thought about how strange it was that Bruston had a perfect training plan prepared on the first day he arrived. Rick thought that they were just ready to train any allies they encountered, so they could defeat Kaiser Elsapiet. This wasn't the only reason, as Mizet reveals that Bruston was always waiting to train up someone he could fight on equal ground. Orc has a culture of fighting, but Bruston is so strong that he has never once had an even fist fight. Bruston has felt alone since childhood, so it is his dream to one day fight on equal ground with someone. Mizet is sure that Bruston was hoping that his fight with Rick would fulfill his dream, so he wants Rick to consider that. Alyssarette also expresses her feelings, and Rick gives it some thought. Rick has a memory of when he first met Bruston, and he was terrified, just from their handshake. Bruston could tell that didn't have any fighting experience, and he had the lowest magic capacity. Rick thought that Bruston was just the same as all the people who denounced his dream, and he assumed that he would tell him to give up on becoming an adventurer. Rick was shocked because this was not the case, and Bruston just told him that he would have to train hundreds of times harder than someone with talent. Rick couldn't believe that he was accepting him, and Bruston just wondered if he was ready to endure that kind of training. Angelica is furious about Rick's behavior, and she wonders if Bruston's training was really that terrifying. Mizet explains that it was hell on earth, and he is surprised that Rick didn't go crazy during it. How Rick managed to last for over 2 years is a complete mystery. Angelica's in disbelief, because Rick has no skill, but he decided to put himself through grueling training at the age of 40. The others reveal that Rick has an inborn skill, but the activation requirement is tricky. Its strength can't be controlled, and it takes a huge toll on Rick's body. Because of this, Bruston forbade the use of it. Back at the inn, Rick wonders if he is pathetic. Rionette doesn't think so, but Rionette says that she would like Rick even more if he fought for Bruston's sake. The day of the final match finally arrives, and Snape is more nervous than anyone because he fears that Rick will withdraw right before the fight. Rick is waiting nearby, and Rick explains that he is over his fear. Rick has determined that all he has to do is throw everything he has learned from Bruston. Rick tries to act super confident, but it's obvious that he is still terrified. In the arena, the announcer reveals the long list of rewards for the winner. Rick is still terrified, so Rionette whispers something into his ear. Both fighters take the field, and Rick declares that he will be giving everything he has. Bruston looks forward to it, and instructs Rick to take everything he has taught him and send it right back to him. No one has any clue about who might win, because they are both so powerful, and the match begins. Rick starts by using the flickering feet technique, but it is way faster than Angelica has ever seen. Rick eventually stops, and Bruston is very impressed, because Rick managed to make him bleed. Snape wonders what kind of magic is being used, but Angelica reveals that they haven't used any magic at all. Their movements are way too fast for Snape to see, so the others explain that Bruston blocked several blows, but Rick managed to hurt him using a thread slash. The fight continues as Rick applies some pressure, but Bruston pushes him back. Rick just barely manages to dodge a devastating attack, and he lands another thread slash. Angelica is amazed by this level of fighting, so she wonders what Rionette told Rick. Rionette reveals that she asked Rick to take her on the hot springs trip that the winner of the tournament gets. Angelica is horrified when she assumes that the two of them will be getting intimate, and Rionette makes it worse by not denying it. Bruston is glad to see that Rick has come to fight, and decides that it would be rude for him to do nothing but defend. Bruston unleashes a horrifyingly powerful punch, and it causes mass panic. Kelvin is in disbelief, because Bruston's one punch has more power than level 5 nature-composed magic. Rick knows that he won't survive if he just runs in carelessly, and he dodges for his life, as Bruston unleashes a barrage of punches. Rick realizes that it is just a distraction, and Angelica becomes worried about him. Rionette isn't concerned, and we see that Rick dodged the attack. Everyone is stunned, because Rick used a simple level 1 magic technique to block Bruston's insanely powerful attack. What Kelvin is most impressed by is that Rick activated it without pausing to gather his magic. Bruston compliments Rick for his precise magic control, because even he can't perform magic without saying the magic's name first. Rick credits Elisarette and Mizet for teaching him, but they say that it is all because Rick trained really hard. Rick uses incredible speed to land another attack, but it doesn't do much, and Bruston counterattacks. Everyone thinks Rick is crazy for directly attacking Bruston from the front, and Rick ends up in the air where he is most vulnerable. Bruston goes to finish the fight, but Rick amazingly uses the same level 1 magic spell to cast an air cushion beneath his feet, so he can change direction. Rick follows up with a powerful air attack of his own, but Bruston is unharmed. Angelica is amazed at their power, because their strength exceeds human understanding. They belong in the realm of monsters, and it is clear that this is a battle between two S ranks. Rick can't believe that his airstrike didn't do anything, and he determines that he has to use it at a closer range. Bruston is pleased to see that his training on Rick worked out perfectly, but it was only possible because of Rick's mental and emotional strength. Rick couldn't be happier to hear these words, but they are still the words that a teacher gives to a student. Bruston's dream is to fight someone on equal ground, so Rick determines that he hasn't done enough. Rick reveals that the others told him about Bruston's dream, so the embarrassed Bruston says that they exaggerated. Rick doesn't believe him, because he saw firsthand the passion Bruston had when training him. Rick wants to repay Bruston for all his efforts, and Rick declares that he will also fight him with respect. Bruston realizes how fortunate he is, because Rick has truly become a member of their party. Bruston decides that this is the perfect time to talk about the past, specifically about how the Orichalcum Fist came to be. So now what will happen next? Subscribe to our channel to find out what will happen next. So friends, if you liked our recap video, then please like and share this video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.